welcome to the Stanley Street Social Podcast. Back to the head office, Max Gawn, and joining us today, we've got the director of Signature Sport, Jason Bakker, who has a wealth of athletes under his wing that he's mentored into the pro cycling ranks, which I think you speak of it as you've also bagged yourself a Tour de France win across the time.
Yep, one of the two Australians to have ever won the Tour de France, myself and Cadell. So celebrated far and wide across Melbourne. That wasn't it? Welcomed us back from France. It was great times. Very good times. Max, you were just dusting off your schedule for the day. 5:30 wake up.
Yep.
Can you just run us through what it actually looks like?
Training to do. I usually get to train around 7:30. It's about an hour drive from. I'm down the coast now, so an hour drive from wherever I am. So I like to wake up, get some eggs into me, have a coffee, and just tune into the GCN app and have a little watch on whatever stage was on the night before. At the moment, it's Tour de Romandie. Did I say that right?
Nailed it.
Nailed it. Yeah. Which is extreme Australian talent going on there at the moment. So that's, and I get a bit flat when there's not like a little one-day race or a stage race for one of the mornings. I don't know what to do.
Well, it's pretty rare though.
It is rare.
It seems like we're just running tour into or 1 week tours into stage races we just come through a wealth of spring classics with the...
Sometimes you have to chase the European tour every now and then just to suss out what's going on there.
Yeah.
How's life down the coast, Max, by the way?
It is beautiful, Jace. Yep. It is one of the better moves I've done. Not sure if my wife completely agrees, but we're only an hour out of town, so it's not like it's the world's worst drive, and we're at Cranbourne at the moment, the D's, so we train at Casey Field, so... I like it, and I'm enjoying my life, and that's probably why my footy's going well as well. I've always thought you got to have some enjoyment outside of the game, and you tend to play your best footy when that happens.
It's a very good point, Jason. Something that a lot of athletes ponder with when they first go to the European ranks as a pro athlete, as an amateur. As an amateur, you're normally a bit more restricted to where your team is located, but currently, if guys are turning pro, what are you recommending in terms of where they live, what they're considering, and what they're looking for? Because as Max touched on,
invest in their happiness.
Yeah.
So don't be scared to spend some money at the start, even though they haven't got a heap. Like for amateurs, they don't have the option, but for the young pro riders, the neo pros, and that, don't be scared to invest a bit of money in a good TV, good coffee machine. Set your house up or your unit or apartment up properly so it feels like home. So it starts to feel like home after a while. So I remember that's the first thing with Caleb. Like we weren't sure, he wasn't sure whether to buy an outdoor setting for his balcony and that. And there was looking at a cheap one, get a proper one. You're going to spend a bit of time. You're in a little apartment. Your balcony's going to be your sanctuary really. So I think invest in your happiness.
The big issues of the outdoor setting. Which one did he go for?
He went for like the stone type. It was quite a heavy one.
That's nice.
And I remember one. He went for a training ride. He had that much. I got there's that much cardboard. He's got this balcony overlooking the Mediterranean. He's got full of cardboard. You couldn't sit out there and have a coffee or anything. So I got the Stanley knife out and actually made myself useful and cut up the cardboard. Felt like my old man actually, like he's done for me over the years, and put it in the recycling bin. But I think it's important that the boys invest in their happiness. I would say that to any sportsman, anyone, but certainly if you're living overseas and you're a little bit nervous and anxious and whatever, try and make it feel like home.
Especially on that neo-pro contract, it can be a bit like, not earning that much money, what do I do with it? But as you said, you can't really put a value on you being comfortable.
I think what Max said is a very good point. You're happy in life. It gives you the best chance to translate into your performance. And so for me, that's a wise investment in your performance. If it doesn't work out, well, it's not going to be a difference between your life prosperity, whether you're going to be financially successful or not. So I think it's a really important thing. You got
to invest in the game to try and get money out of the game.
Yeah, exactly. That's like a business, isn't it?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they talk to us about that all the time. There's so many things you can do to make sure your body and your mental space is at the right level, but you got to invest. I don't think I got too much money to show for my first 3 or 4 years in the football club. I was lowly paid as well. Back then, my first contract was $40,000, which I mean it's great money for an 18-year-old. But now they're at 100 minimum. The AFL guys going in. Yeah. And I made sure I invested in everything just to make sure I was happy and had the right surroundings and Not saying that's why I'm still playing football, but I'm sure it's got a pretty good
Played a part,
factor,
I bet. Yep.
It was something even Caleb did that in the under-23 ranks.
Yeah, he did.
He moved out of where all the other boys were staying.
Out of the dormitory.
Same deal. It's his own apartment, his own space. He had his own coach. He had kitted out to the nines.
He had a pro's mind right from the start, didn't he?
Yeah.
Before he was pro.
Whereas me and Flakey were flapping around in Gavarate, just trying to keep our heads above water.
Deciding which gelati you're going to have that night, what flavour.
Exactly. Was there any other things? So, housing, one. Was there anything else that you invested in early that you think really reaped rewards at the end?
Definitely a lot of cycling stuff. So in terms of my bike, I had a watt bike at home. That sort of setup, so that made my knee nice and strong, which wasn't cheap. And anyone who knows anything got to do with bikes, it's quite steep. Unless you know Jason, he tends to help you out sometimes. But and then recovery, making your body as good as possible. Like I had a sauna at home at one point, which was a big investment. So there's stuff like that. Just constantly investing in stuff that makes you like. I get happiness from feeling good as well. So being in the ocean, stuff like that.
Yeah, yep. Jason, what's the biggest topic at the moment for you under your suite of athletes? Caleb Ewan, Lucas Hamilton, Rob Stannard, Jack Haig. There's a bit going on at the moment.
Yeah, they're all. If you mention those four guys, and Dylan Sunderland as well, a young guy with Assos Quebecer, they're all at different stages of their career and different stages of the season, their preparation, where their goals are. Caleb is building towards the Giro. We know that Caleb said he's going to try and win a stage of every Grand Tour this year. Ideally, if things move in the right way, he's going to have a look at the green jersey, see if he can have a little bit of see how he goes in the climbs. And I think what we saw at Milan San Remo suggests that may not be not a far-fetched goal, I would think.
He's almost riding people off his wheel.
Yeah, the Van Aerts and Van der Poels and any other van there was trying to sort of just hanging on to him there, going up the Poggio there. So, yeah, look, I think Caleb's in great form. The team, not necessarily, but personally, he's in great form. So he's got a big year ahead of him, and I think he'd be encouraged by his form. I think he'd probably like to see the team showing a bit more form too. So that's fair to say, would it be?
Well, it was something that I brought up with Max. I did a podcast with Caleb after Milan San Remo and almost fell off my chair when he said that they went to the race with him, Philip Gilbert, Wellens, Degenkolb as leaders, and no one was with him over the top of the climb.
4 options.
It speaks to one of my kind of moments that still sticks in my head when Trenton was in the bunch. He was at Mitchelton Scott, and I still haven't forgiven Trenton.
Nibley.
When Nibley won, Trenton was in the bunch. He had one teammate there, didn't do the job. Caleb wins the bunch.
Well, he rode off by himself, didn't he? Trying to catch him himself. I think you'll be prepared to lose it to win it, don't you?
If he has one teammate that gets over that climb, they chase your pick, Jasper Stuyven.
Yeah. I think he's, and Caleb looks at Stuyven and says, oof, I'd like to have him riding for me, but he's strong. But yeah, you got to be prepared to lose it to win it. Yeah. So, when you got option A, B, C, D, G, how often does that come up? Like, sometimes you got to be like, well, if option A doesn't work for us, we don't win the race. It's okay. We're going to put all our eggs into that basket. That's my view anyway. So.
I remember we chatted last year about the amount of talented sprinters there are in the tour at the moment. But I think there's a clear 2 now, which means surely they invest heavily on Caleb, because Sam and Caleb look like they're ahead of Arno Demar and Grunewagen and these guys. Looks like there's a clear 2. And the fact that you're going in to the only sprint-friendly one-day classic, the fact that you're going in with 4 men as favourites and not the best sprinter in the world was phenomenal.
Well, they're there. If Bennett and Caleb are in the race, they're invariably in the sprint. They're invariably in the top 3 every time. They're there every time. So the others sometimes, and Demar, look, he had a good year last year, but Caleb and Bennett have been there for a few years now. Yep. They're there, and Caleb's what's Bennett 30, 31?
He's a bit older.
Yeah, Demar's a bit older. So Caleb's still quite young compared to those guys. Him and Gaviria are sort of that mid-20 range. The other boys are sort of more 30-ish. Well, Groenewegen might be around Caleb's age, but you just feel like Caleb's ready. He's such a pro, and he's been building and building and building, and he's coming into his absolute prime. Like, get behind him, guys. Come on. He can do some damage.
Yep.
So yeah, look, he's a strong person, Caleb. So he's got a lot to look forward to. There's a lot of the year ahead, a lot of the season ahead. But Milan San Remo, you'd like to think he's destined to win that. But not, I always say you want to win it, but I think Caleb's good enough to win it multiple times. I'd like to see him win it 3 times. Each year goes by, maybe that becomes harder. But who else do we talk about? Lucas?
Climbing well.
Caleb?
Lucas.
Oh, Lucas. Yeah, so I think Lucas is building up beauty. Lucas, if you know Lucas, everything's quite methodical. He's very mature the way he plans. He doesn't get his calm, composed, measured guy, I reckon, Lucas. He's playing the long game, I reckon, in his career, and I feel like he's playing the long game in the year this year. That's my view of Lucas. Like, he's always got his picture on the long game, not the early win. So if he doesn't where's he top 10 this year? I'm just trying to think, what races is Lucas top 10 in?
Paris-Nice top 10.
Paris-Nice.
That was a significant one. I think for me too, having a bit of communication with him, he's like got this piece of confidence that he knows that he's not at the top yet, and he's still getting those results. There's a little bit more to come.
He's not getting nervous or anxious by seeing Pogacar go and win a Tour, or Bernal, or Sivakov, or these guys who show performances at times. He's really just focusing on what he's doing, not what others are doing. You could apply that to every sport, but it seems logical, but it's not common. So I think Lucas is playing a really good game.
He's going Giro or Tour?
Tour.
Well, don't know yet.
Don't know if it's Tour. I think that's rumoured to be potentially the plan. I mean,
and who are they taking there? Is it Yates?
So they're taking
Yates is the Giro. Yates is doing the Giro, so which leaves. Yeah,
Esteban looks in good form, to be fair.
That's. So I was speaking to Rob Stannard about that, and he said he's riding very, very well, and he feels like the challenges he's had, via illness wise, whatever. He's genuinely. They were genuine real issues, and he's come over that. He's a smart rider. His confidence is up. So he's riding well, that's right. He'd be one of the more informed riders going around at the moment.
He was beating Michael Matthews basically in the 2 one-day classics they rode together. I was almost saying you should ride for Esteban here.
Yeah, so he's in really good form, which gives them another option for Bike Exchange, which is great. I think Lucas is more moving towards the middle of the year, but that's all to be played out a little bit. But Yates, it seems that he's got a real. I've got some business to do at the Giro, which he's been close before, and clearly that's where he's at the moment. So that's Lucas. Rob Stannard has just finished a really strong classics campaign.
He appeared on my TV in one of the classics. He got close.
Brabant's
Appeal.
Yes.
Come 5th. So he's
and in the move, and in the winning move.
Yeah.
Key point. That is not an easy split to make.
Yeah. I think he's building really nicely. But he's a few years away, Rob. But it's tough competition. Let's face it. But he's under the guidance of Matt Heyman, who's the DS for a lot of his races. But he's a guy who people ask you about Cadell, and I say Cadell has a pure love of riding his bike. Yep. Rob Stannard to me is a pure bike rider. Like, he's a racer.
Seems like he's going to win stages where you need a bit of craft.
Yeah,
that's what it seems like.
Yeah, he's strong.
Yeah.
He was telling me this. Forgotten the races that you was talking to him about. But he was behind Van der Poel, and he was filthy with himself. He took the wrong line behind Van der Poel. What race would have that been? It was a stage race. Anyway, Van der Poel won the stage, but Rob was. I said, "Oh, did he run out of gas?" He was offended that I said, Van der Poel cook here, and he was offended. Like, no, he did not. He took the wrong line and lost his way. And all of a sudden, some of the boys got through underneath him, but. I really like what Rob Stannard's doing, and I really like what he can do in the future. I think he's got some exciting results ahead of him.
Yep.
It's interesting too. Is he kind of under Bling's wing there a little bit at Mitchelton Scott now?
I know he's enjoying that. He's enjoying riding with Bling. He feels that they're combining together really well. So it's the master and the apprentice to a little bit. So I think he's really feels like they're building a really good relationship. He's getting a lot out of that. So he's going really well.
There's another similar rider, the Kiwi, Dion Smith.
Correct.
Yeah, they're all quite similar in the way they ride.
Yeah, that's a good call. So Rob and Dion Smith had a lot of races last year where they were pretty close in the end result.
Did they do the Volta together? Was it that I was watching?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
They did. Yep. And they tend to ride a fair few races. Not as many this year, but last year they did. But they are similar, yep. And then Jack Haig.
Got one more question,
Yep.
just on that Stannard Matthews dynamic. Max touched on it before. I'm really interested to where does Matthews sit now with the Vans, as you've talked about, just dominating that. They've kind of eliminated that part-time sprinter role. If you can climb and sprint, it's like, well, doesn't really matter anymore. If you're looking after Matthews, like what would you be looking at for him as he kind of heads to the back end of his career?
Experience. He's got a lot of experience now, hasn't he? He's been around a long time now. He's got a lot of results. I guess at the end of your career in any sport, you've got to start calling on your experience and your craft. It's a good question, Alex. Like at the moment, when the Vans are on, they haven't just eliminated part-time sprinters; they've eliminated a few other riders as well, I think. So, I would think experience has to play into it. I think maybe you look at it from a different angle. I'm sure they're trying things. He seems to be there or thereabouts, but it's not that easy to beat these blokes. They're pretty special riders.
Has he got a green? Has he got a green jersey?
Green jersey's got
Yeah, he's
one.
got
Yeah.
one.
The one that Sagan got DQ'd
Yeah,
in.
Sagan got DQ'd.
It's these guys, these Van der Poel, Van Aert, Alaphilippe. For me, are we going to see a thing like tennis with Federer, Nadal, Djokovic? Like, is this what it's going to be in cycling moving forward? Are there other guys going to? What's going to happen there? But at the moment, it's looking like they're coming up to an era of a fair bit of dom. Those three are going to win a lot of races.
I thought it was going to happen this year, and then this year we've amazingly seen Quickstep win one with Asgreen, Jasper Stuyven won one. So there's still going to be that occasional.
Of course. Yeah, right. And I think the sport needs that too.
Yeah.
So, but they've obviously, Caleb said these guys are phenomenal riders.
freaks.
They're incredible riders.
Van der Poel's courage to go from far out is something to. Anyway, we're not talking about him.
Yeah. So, and then obviously,
Can you get your hands on Van der Poel potentially? Get him in Signature Sports? No?
Gee, that'd be nice. I'm thinking he'd be pretty well tied up by whoever's looking after Van der Poel. So, I'm pretty happy with the Aussie boys.
Jack Haig?
Jack Haig. So Haigie's at Bahrain Victorious, first year at Bahrain Victorious.
Is that your first time dealing with them?
Yep. First time contractually.
Yep.
So dealt with them. They had Rod Allingworth there, who we dealt with, but Rod subsequently returned back to Team Ineos, where he was Dave Brailsford's sort of main man there. So that threw a little bit of a different slant on things. Sort of when you sort of got someone's vision and you talk through and you buy into somebody's vision, and then that person then goes. That's I guess it's like you looking at a club and saying a coach is a part of it, and then all of a sudden the coach is gone. There's a new coach.
Yeah.
So, but I think Jack's had a really very solid start to the year. Probably flown under the radar a little bit, but had a really good Bastogne-Liège. Really strong ride. Not far, 12 seconds off. Probably wanted a top 10. He went into it wanting a top 10. I think he came 17th. But I think again he's building nicely. But I think they're finding where they are at the moment as a team. So obviously the guy that was coming to set their pathway forward and their direction, the strategy has gone. So they're resetting, I suppose. So
It seems like they're going back to Bilbao and Lander.
Yeah. Well, they're resetting a little bit, but I still think Jack will show himself to. Jack, he's very important for them.
Yeah.
They're going to need Jack to be riding really well. But Jack's a very smart rider and if there's one guy who knows how to have himself in tip-top condition at the right time, Jack. Yeah. Just had the birth of his first child. So sometimes those things, I reckon those things can really. I think Caleb had birth of his first child and went on to win 3 stages of the Tour de France afterwards. So hopefully Jack can have a similar effect on Jack.
Does that mean you're encouraging all your athletes to have kids?
Just maybe just time it outside the Tour de France, like a week before the Tour de France. So not the ideal timing, but. And then Dylan Sunderland's the other guy I manage, and Dylan's at Assos Quebec. He's returning from a bout of COVID-19, and that still plays with him a little bit.
Was he the only one of the 5?
Yeah, And I think COVID is, people are a bit blasé about it, should not be blasé about it. So it's had an effect on him. But he's back, he's riding Romandy, he's doing a really solid job there for the team, and it's good to see him back. But it took the wind out of his sails a bit. Yep.
How's that team coming together? I know Doug pulled a sponsor in really late last year. Thankfully, they've got it off the ground.
Yeah.
How does that kind of affect an athlete's run through that messy period of do we have a sponsor?
I think what they've got is reality. They're real. They don't need a reality check. They know where they're at. So they know that they're a money ball team, so to speak. Yep. They know they don't have the big hitters. They know they don't have the budget of the other teams. But it's a triumph that they're there. But you don't want to just be there on the World Tour. It's like an AFL. You don't want to be just one of 18 teams. We're happy to be here. Yep. That's the worst thing you can be. And that's what Hagee, I guess, talks about with Bahrain. We don't want to just be here and just exist. We've got to have a purpose. We want to know what we're trying to be. I think they know where they're at, and they're trying to be opportunistic. They're trying to sort of, if they get in enough breaks, then hopefully one can stick. They know realistically they've come off a pretty challenging Classics campaign. But I think they can build. I believe that they're talking to some new sponsors. They need some budget. But it's a long term. Doug Ryder's a really good person. He's a good person you want in cycling. Having a team from South Africa or a South African aligned team, that's great for the sport globally. And they do great things for people, for the kids in Africa. And I think there's got some really good people on the team. So Simon Clark's a great person for that team to go there. Someone like him in a leadership role, person who knows how to punch above their weight, so to speak. So he's a perfect person for Assos Quebecer. Rob Power, as we know, went there. And so it's a good team for Dylan. He's got a role at the team and he feels valued. So, but they've got to build. Yeah.
Talking to Doug last year, I actually came out of it amazed as the kind of the clear direction that he has towards what they're there for. Like you talked about, there's a clear purpose, which I don't think any other team has. Ineos is connected to the tour, but that's victory based. Everyone else is performance based. Quick Step in their culture, maybe. But yeah, speaking of Doug, I think if he can continue to articulate, they should be the most financially safe team in the peloton. But yeah.
Yep.
On Hagee too, did you see last night's little lead out from him? He let out Colbrelli with about 500 to go.
Was that Hagee?
Yeah, that was Hagee.
Yeah, right.
I knew that. I haven't seen it yet. I must admit, I saw Colbrelli won it, and that's a boost for that team.
Yeah.
I didn't realise Hagee let him out.
I had my Kiwi hat on, so I was wanting Paddy Bevan, unfortunately. And I was actually quite unhappy because he was on Hagee's wheel, and then Sonny got in front of him. No, that's a lead out, man. Put that in the resume as well.
Put it in the resume.
Another string to your bow. You can't have too many strings to your bow, eh?
Perfect.
It's like putting you up forward, Max, and taking a big mark, kicking a goal up forward, which you've become a goal kicker now. So, although you like doing it from outside 50 more than up forward in the goal square.
I don't like the close ones. Do not like the close ones. I like kicking through the ball. For some reason, I don't kick through it when I'm close.
It's more of a crowd pleaser out from out 50 anyway. So
it's always against Geelong as well. Seem to be missing easy ones against Geelong.
It doesn't really matter though, because you've already got enough of a buffer to seal the game up.
Yeah, correct. I kicked it when it mattered in the 2018 final against Geelong. Went back and slotted one that day.
I'll come back with some Geelong comments a bit later in this podcast. I've got a few jotted down.
Is what excites you about the sport at the moment, Jason? What are you looking at? What is there? Where are the growth opportunities?
Coming out of we're not out of COVID-19, obviously, but coming out of this, it almost gives you a chance to reset. And if you're smart, and I'm not sure, everyone gets a chance to reset and say, well, you can try new things, you can do new things. I mean, sometimes when we've had an experience like we've had a pandemic, it's almost like you can go back to square one and say, it's without sort of, you try and do that. Like the AFL last year, you try and go back to square one without a pandemic, like year on year on year. It's impossible. But now, sort of anything's on the table. Now we saw what happened in the AFL last year. You would have thought you'd have 20-something games in however many days it was. And what we had, it shows you can do things. You actually can do things. It doesn't have to be the same old. So what excites me is, why not try some things? Why not it's the time we're still in the pandemic, particularly in Europe. We're still compromised. So that excites me. Not sure what that is, but to say what could it be? It showed that we could do races at different times of the year. We could do consolidate things into short periods, big races into short periods. What doesn't excite me is, the united approach that we'll need to bring that on. Like the AFL, one thing I think about a lot with sport, you never maybe get total unity, but you need unity. Like the athletes for the Players Association, you're going into collective bargaining agreements and that. If you haven't got unity, then you don't achieve anything. And as a sport, and then there's a bigger picture about having unity, about a bigger picture. The big thing I think about cycling, I try to always think about this with other sports. Is there another sport that really requires so much on multinational, different cultures and different, languages, people to unify to actually represent what's good for the sport? Like if you look at soccer, the English players are represented by the Professional Footballers Association in England. They're not represented by a global body.
Yep.
It's by the country. But cycling doesn't have that. Cycling doesn't even barely has a representative body. It says it does, but it barely does. So the sport, how does it come together? How does the French teams come together with French teams and the Aussie team and the English team and how do we come together? How does the sport come together and for the common good? I waffled on a bit there.
It's a good point. That's one thing you do see with cycling is they haven't changed like COVID and they've just gone straight back to normal. Yeah, they had a revamp last year and it was kind of cool seeing one days mixed with some tour stuff and but it hasn't changed. Footy's changed.
It has changed.
Soccer's changing. NBA's changing. Cycling. The different thing about cycling is the fact there's so many different cultures in one peloton.
Yeah,
and it'd be crazy to manage that. Crazy to manage
So
all
hard.
and so many unwritten rules. Like the Italians ride bikes differently to the French, and the French ride bikes differently to the Aussies. It'd be a hard thing to manage.
So Jack previously had a English speaking coach at Bahrain. Now he has an Italian coach, which is team appointed, but he doesn't speak very good English. So the cultural crossover is a huge challenge that we don't even think about here. Back in AFL, you get drafted, and you might have to go across states, but you go and get billeted out by a English speaking family who probably give you a lot of love and care and home cooking and all that. But you go and move over there, and I know Cadell lived in the bloody attic of an old Italian lady who didn't speak English when he first got over there. Imagine that. Anyway, so you're right, Max. What are they going to change? Take the opportunity. We had a game. What was it? North Melbourne and Freo didn't have crowds. We didn't blink an eyelid at it. It's just what you do now. We're adaptable now because
we're flying day of the game for our Tassie game. It's a 1 o'clock start. We're at the airport at 8. I'll leave Blair Gary at about 6.
And you deal with it.
Yeah,
it's what it is now. We deal with it.
That's just
what that to me opens up opportunities. That things are on the table now.
Yeah.
So at the moment it's necessity. It's opportunities out of necessity to get the content up, the games up. But in the future, things are on the table for the good, for new things. So yeah, you're right. Is cycling going to do that? Don't know.
I hope they don't miss it because, like you said at the start, they're about to go into this Van der Poel v Van Aert battle, and they got to capitulate that. They got to make sure that they use that in the right way and it promotes cycling.
Yep.
Well, they've got these amazing stories that are just being naturally created by athletes. The Vans, the two Slovenians going at it, but there's no one to take that on. You've got the AFL just to take that on and record it and capture it and present it and build it up and pull the media in around it. With cycling, which is a pretty topical one with the European Super League getting traction and then falling over within 2 weeks, but it was a similar concept around they wanted to unify things, unify the structure, unify the games, clear revenue streams, shorter, sharper, more consumable calendar. Jason, what would it take in cycling? Like how is it possible?
Well, it'll take winners and losers. There'll be some winners out of it and there'll be some losers out of it. But what the European Soccer League was going to be, or like the Champions League, it's a narrative. So cycling is just race after race after race after race. We were saying before, there's something on every day. That's great in a sense, but you don't want it to become meaningless. Everything's got to mean something. Every race, every day, every stage has to mean something. one of the things as a cricketer, I just hate series that get plucked out of nowhere. There's a 3-game, 1-day international series, Australia versus New Zealand out of nowhere, or Australia go to such and such to play a quick series somewhere and then they're out. Like, to me, it's all got to lead up to something. That's the beauty of the AFL, is that for every game is important. 4 points is important. Yep. It all leads to an ultimate outcome. So, and either end of the table. So if at the table you're looking towards the future, what the bounty of talent at the bottom end of the table, if that's where you're at, because there's a narrative around that. There's a narrative at the top end, we want to win the grand final. So cycling's different. I'm not comparing everything to the AFL, but it's about structure, maybe some structure and everything means something. You just don't want races meaning nothing. What will it take, though? What you say?
How is there anyone rich enough to do that? To take everything, pull it all together. The I kind of see the ASL as slowly creeping towards that. You know what?
If you think, what's the biggest thing that's happened in Australian sport along those lines? The biggest flip of something. It has to be World Series cricket. I don't know. Maybe has to be the 70s. Kerry Packer come in. Who thought someone could come in and take over cricket and take it away from the Australian Cricket Board, which was all powerful? But that needed unified. They needed unified players, unification of the players to do that. Everybody had to be. And if half the players were in, half weren't, it wouldn't have worked. He got them all together, on board.
If it benefits the athlete, you're halfway there.
Exactly.
But cycling's a little bit different because the tour think they're bigger than the athlete. But it's going to be a hard race in a tour or a Giro or a Volta with no athletes.
Bigger than the sport.
Yeah.
So it's is there anyone rich enough? I don't. Is it?
But also, like you pointed out, it's not just rich enough, influential enough.
It's not just about money. It's influential. Who can pull them together?
Who can bring it together?
It would take something significant. It's not a person. It might be whether it's a News Corp or a big. But someone has to see enough value in the sport too. Because you're right. You do things for a reason, for a purpose.
What's Cadell's back pocket like?
It's not as good. It's not as much as it's going to require for this, I don't think. So he's look. Cadell will be a great person to get on the podcast to talk about this. He's still very, very passionate about the sport.
Yep.
It's almost like I feel like just the sport, like the AFL Commission. Could cycling have a commission or a body that oversees? I know there's a UCI, but almost like, could there be an independent body? I don't know, of esteemed people, businessmen, esteemed former cyclists. There are a variety of people that you have a multinational 12-person type commission that oversees the sport, which I know you say, well, we've got the UCI, but I don't know. Does it need something like that?
Imagine the run sheet if we get Cadell. You'll send that out 2 weeks out.
Oh, yeah. There'll be iterations of it.
But Cadell's a person, he'd be a fantastic person on that. He thinks he cares about the sport. He thinks about the growth of the sport. He's not a selfish bloke. So you can't have selfishness.
Yep.
You can't have self-interest in these things. So there needs people for the good of the sport, the growth of the sport.
With the kind of the two ways that teams are funded, either through big sponsorships or an individual that has a bucket load of cash that they can push at it. Do you think the likes of Jerry Ryans and the Tinkoffs, and do they have too much self-interest to be able to rally it together, to pull together as one?
I don't know. Do you want to?
The short answer is yes.
Yep.
I think that's why they put money. I know Jerry. I don't know Jerry at all. I know Jerry loves cycling and loves rugby league, and that's why he puts the money in. But he also, people who do that like to know that it's their money. So there's always going to be self-interest involved in that. Getting billionaires to align with each other could be one of the hardest gigs you ever do.
Yeah, I think Jerry's a very different person to someone like Tinkoff. So I think Jerry, like there's a body called Valon, which is a collaboration of around about 12 teams. So I'm not sure where Valon are at the moment. They've gone a bit quieter, but they were 12 teams pooling resources together to try and create new revenue streams for the sport outside of back pockets and sponsorship. And so Jerry was Team Bike Exchange were part of Valon and a big part of it. So that's a starting point. But the French teams would never be part of Valon. Not sure if Movistar were part of it, but certainly some aligned. The French teams purely because of the ASO and the owners of the Tour de France, and there was reasons why for their own purposes they just couldn't be part of it. I think they had a gun pointed at their head probably. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
In saying all this, how messy UCI and cycling is, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of what cycling's about as well.
That's a good point.
It's kind of cool that they're the only sport that doesn't have their shit together. Like, there's stuff going on. There's stuff going on everywhere. Like the French don't talk to the rest of the teams. Like it's just
that's a good point.
There's
a rawness about it that it's not controlled.
Yeah.
That you see you would see.
But I wouldn't enjoy being an athlete in that sport.
Nah. There'd be a limit to how much you.
It's good for a spectator, probably poor for an athlete.
Yeah.
It's good once you get inside it. Once you get into the core of it, like Max watching GCN highlights every morning, that's when it's good. But if you're trying to get into it, the barriers to work out what's going on is so far. What's this race doing? Why is this guy doing this? It's a long way. And so I think just the default is you just watch the Tour de France. And that's the outcome of this kind of...
The question is, in 100 years' time, if they don't change, is it still viable?
That's the thing. They got to cash in.
Is it still viable in 100 years if
Probably
they don't
not.
change and don't get the shit together?
What I know about millennials, and there's a few around the football club, like Nathan Jones had his 300th game. Great. Cosy Pickett doesn't know he played more than 2 years. Like, millennials do not care about history and will never care about history. So the Tour de France being like, we all go, how good would it be to win a Tour de France? Millennial go, what's got the highest prize money? Paris-Roubaix? Oh, I'll go there. Yeah. Like they honestly don't care about the history.
Is that right? Okay.
So as we move on, and I'm guessing the generation that's going to be below millennials, I don't know what they're called. What are they called? Idiots?
Let's run with that one for the moment.
Yeah.
The next generation, there's going to be less and less worry about winning something that's got prestige around it.
So there's not going to be any Harry Taylors down there with war history buffs?
No. So they go, history, like people might, I've got friends that love World War history and stuff like that. I'm talking like the prestige of winning events.
Yeah.
It's going to be more about what they can get in their back pocket.
Okay.
I dare say.
Yep.
Follow the money. Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. And I guess, like, do you take confidence, Max, that you know that there's a body behind you that's working that out for you? Cycling's over here just doing whatever goes in that country, whereas you know you've got a clear body that's got business management at the top of it, following that trend, evolving.
Our PA, as much as I'm not a big union man, I don't really buy into a lot of the things. I sit on the outside. I'm actually one of the people the union probably hate, like a powerful voice who just sits there and doesn't do anything. But I understand our PA is probably one of the better players association worldwide.
Would be.
Maybe one of the American sports. I know NFL and NBA have got a bit of power in their league, the players. Definitely NFL, but our AFLPA is really good, and our AFL body is really good as well. They pull a rule out of their ass sometimes, but we got a genuinely healthy competition, don't we?
Yeah. They've got a voice, they've got an influence, they're listened to, and they're well presented. Like they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So the cycling, the cyclists, I really, I won't say my heart breaks, but I look at the guys, sometimes what they have to go through. It's a tough sport. If you're earning 80 grand, 100 grand, it's a tough way to earn 100 grand a year.
Yeah.
But the cyclist representation quite often just reverts down to safety in their sport. And that's a big topic for sure. But there's so many more topics than just safety in the race. So the welfare, how do we get some sort of parity in cycling wages? What's the view of the cycling union? God, I've forgotten their name. CPA, whatever it is. What's their view of the future of the sport? What's their mandate? What do they want to see happen? So, are they listened to properly? Last year when we had the COVID, and we had obviously quite a lot of teams having to cut wages last year, and the AFL had that too. But what was their role in that? They just didn't really have a seat at the table.
Sports that have missed the boat with players' bodies, like players' association bodies, are struggling now because tennis. I'm not sure if you know much about tennis, but Novak's tried to start his own players' association, and it's almost too hard to play catch up to a sport that's been dominated by the actual body. So tennis is ATP, I think.
That's right.
And then it's almost similar with other sports, even the smaller ones in Australia, like rugby union. They're just trying to catch up so much where the players don't have a voice. I think that's why I'm so lucky to be playing AFL for many reasons, but one is AFL is one of the league brands, the leading brands in that space.
Head of the game, and the AFL made hard decisions when they needed to be made, and unpopular decisions.
Yep.
So put the commission in, 20 years ahead of every other sport, and that's why they're forever. You've got that. You're ahead of the game always. So the AFL's one of the best administered sports in the world, easily.
Is that back to the topic we were talking about before? Is that the way that you get to it? So you've got the first option of coming from the top with the cashed up influential people pulling everything together, or the other end of the spectrum of the athletes going up to it always comes back to the ASO being in the middle. They're really the only powerful body in cycling.
Is there a TV rights?
Yeah.
Well,
that doesn't go to the athletes.
It's not.
No.
It does not. There's TV rights around various races,
but it goes to the Tour de France.
It goes to the owners.
Yeah. The ASO is a private, highly successful business.
Yeah. So teams don't even get any sort of. Yeah.
Generally not. They get a fee to participate in the Tour de France.
Yeah.
Which would they would say that is funded by the.
That's
broadcast
would
rights.
It be heavily negotiated though?
No, I wouldn't have thought so. And that was the catalyst for Kerry Packer and World Series cricket. Was the TV rights, the broadcast rights going straight to the Australian Cricket Board, as they were called then, and the players weren't sharing in it, and weren't sharing in any of the returns. So, but then you get some events that don't have TV rights. The Cadel Evans Great Australian Race is not really a broadcast revenue giant. But the Tour de France, look, it's the biggest tourism advert in the world on an annual basis. There's big dollars we're talking about there. But they would argue that they've created not necessarily just the riders, and they would say, well, if you don't want to ride them, we'll find another team. We'll just put another team in. We'll put another French team in. But yeah,
I'm pretty sure I did an interview on Sunrise pre the great Cadel Evans Great Ocean Road Race. That didn't go around the world. The interview on,
went around
Sunrise.
Went around a few towns of Victoria, I think, Max. So Sunrise it was too. You did too. That's right. Our broadcast partner, Seven.
Who's the sports reporter there who loves to jump on a bike?
Mark Beretta.
Yeah, Mark Beretta.
Barrett's to his mates, to me. Barrett's. Mark Beretta to sort of everyone else.
All the punters.
It's good bloke.
Yeah. But like for a race like Cadell's, such a fantastic event, but for you to take that to another level is such a long journey because there's nothing to latch onto. There's no Formula One Grand Prix season that you can be a part of. You are just a standalone. Well, even Tour Down Under connecting to that is hard enough.
So on that basis that some couple of years back, or maybe 3 or 4 years ago, there was work in place about creating a series, a one-day calendar, and of starting with the monuments and then adding a few every year. So, you have you got your monument races, and you add Strada Bianchi to it, which is, there's talk about making that the 6th monument. But the Cadel Evans Great Ocean Road Race, so we're in discussions with the body of the relevant bodies to kick that off, to have the Cadel Evans Great Ocean Road Race as the first one-day classic in the classics calendar for the year, finishing up with Lombardia, I suppose. Do you call it Lombardia on this show, or Lombardia? What?
He just calls it the worst race of the year. Oh, that's what he was telling me before.
So what do we prefer, Lombardia or Lombardia?
I reckon Lombardia.
Lombardia, okay.
Yeah, correct pronunciation.
Okay. Over the other side of the Westgate, it's Lombardia over there. So anyway, now I'm in Hawthorn, I suppose it's Lombardia. But
it is correct.
So there was a narrative there. They was going to have work up to 15 races or something, which would have been a table and best rider, most point, best team, etc.
There is a points ranking. The cyclists
which takes in all the.
Do they really care about their points ranking?
Yeah, I think
they only care about
yeah.
they only care about the UCI points they get, which adds to the value of their contract.
So when you see an 8-person breakaway win a stage and then 9th is randomly sprinted for, that's for those points. They want them.
Yeah, I think they want them.
UCI points,
Yep.
which is in turn adds to your contract value.
Yep.
Yeah, and World Tour. When you, as a team, when you want to retain your license and everything, there's a points element to it. At the moment, I don't think there's. I think with the economic issues around the world and whatever, I don't think there's teams jumping out, new teams jumping out left, right, and centre. So it's a bit quiet in that space.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's touch on sprinting. One of the things that happened since we last did a podcast, and I think we questioned Cav's.
The Cav.
Cav's relevancy in the bunch anymore. He's like, we're talking about.
He was winning bunch sprints against Andre Greipel. Let's calm down a little bit, but it was
Hang on.
good to see
Hear me out. So
Let's not go into too much detail.
we were talking about, like, what is he doing? You should just hang it up. Like, he's never going to win ever again. He's this absolute legend. Now I know he hasn't touched up Greipel in early 2010, but if I was a sprinter, like, would you be just keeping an eye out? This Mark Cavendish is back winning. There's an element in that.
Is Caleb keeping an eye out for Cav?
So I would say Caleb did you see Caleb put a little, there's a tweet or Instagram post, whatever, he put a little one, like Caleb bows to Mark Cavendish. Caleb has the utmost respect. He's the grandmaster of sprinting.
He's my Dean Cox.
Yeah, exactly. Grandmaster. Everybody's got respect. They respect them. So you're never going to hear these guys go, oh, nah. They're always going to say you might have something up his sleeve. I think the reality is that Cav's a bit off the pace against those guys. It's been a long time since Cav has even got close to him. Is it not, Alex?
And yeah,
would that be fair to
I
say?
think, like we talked about, we got those two guys. Damar, I think, just that touch level down. Cav, just a wealth of experience and a winner. I still love when he interviews. He talks about, like, he sounds like he's the best rider in the world. He's been crushing it for the last 5 years.
To be fair, he did beat Jasper Philipsen, who has won bunch sprints against good cyclists.
Yeah.
So that's there is something there. But if imagine the day Sam Bennett has to lead out Cav because Cav's going better.
Well, that's where they got lost at Skilder Prize.
Yeah.
They were both there.
They were both there.
And
It was messy.
they were both looking up at Philipsen on the podium going,
I think that team's that good that if they make the decision to ride for Cav, then you're in the game.
Yep.
So they're that good. And we've seen, how many riders have we seen leave the team and just go nowhere? So they're that good at it. But I don't think Cavs, personally, I hope I don't get egg on my face, but I just don't think Cavs going to beat those fast guys.
I think, like I said before, Caleb and Sam are in their own league. Like Ackerman, Damar, Viviani, Gavilia, all these guys just seem to be that one step below.
Yeah, yep.
We are biased, but I only think Bennett's in that league because of the team he's in.
Yep.
I'd agree with that.
But you would stand by that Caleb doesn't want a team like that, does he? Like a 7-person lead-out type setup.
No, but he wouldn't mind being gifted a couple just to finish him off, I think.
Yeah.
Most wins Caleb has, he has to ride spectacularly.
Team up with the FDJ Aussie. What's his name?
Miles Scottson.
Yeah. He seems to be doing a wonderful job for a Damar.
No, I'm sure he'd be up for that.
Yeah.
I'm sure. He's had a win recently.
Yeah.
He's doing a really good job, Miles Scottson. You go to a team like that can be a wasteland for a bloke like that.
Yep.
That was great to see. And he's riding really well for them. And that's part of the deal. And that's what, Caleb, we talk about quite a bit, is about who, Morkov's out of contract this year at Quickstep.
Yep.
So you go, what is he, 35, 36? It's great. You go and get Morkov. But when they leave Quickstep, quite often they're not the same rider. So Richese left Quickstep and went to UAE to support Gaviria a year later, but hasn't really amounted to anything.
Yep.
But I think Caleb, to have someone like Scottson, like get a few Aussies in there, I think that's what he's got to be looking forward to for the next 4 or 5 years. So to answer the question, a long way getting around the answer, Caleb's better than just having to be let out every time for a win, but I don't think he would mind being gifted a few just the same.
Did you see Miles Scottson's win?
Yeah, did he got him the jersey?
He got in the jersey,
Yeah, he got in the
and he
jersey.
also crashed with about 3K to go solo off the front. in genuine Miles Scottson form. He would never do it too eloquently. He's binned it with 3K to go on a wet roundabout. He's picked his bike back up in about 10 seconds and went on to another.
They actually had that was a good little stage race then. Stefan Kung won, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. After the movie star guy punched it in the time trial. Mars punched in the time trial. And a little bit of animation. Did you see the clip of him afterwards torching his helmet against the team car?
Yeah.
We're on the outside. We're on the outside. So you're on the inside. Probably not on the inside with Movistar. I'm not sure if you've ever had a rider go through Movistar.
No, but I've had a fair bit to do with them the last couple of years.
Are they as much of a basket case as we say they are on this podcast?
Yeah, that's a good... I reckon I think they're aware...
That they're a basket case?
Yeah. I think they're aware that they haven't been that unified. We're talking about if unification or being unified is a theme of today's podcast. I think they're aware that they haven't been all that unified.
It's not unified. It's more they put the eggs in the wrong basket every time.
Possibly.
Well.
Yeah, possibly. And I think they are trying to evolve a bit more. And look, I think they would have loved Jack Haig to go there. They're trying to expand rather than just be seen as a Spanish team. Don't go to the Spanish team. If you're not Spanish, don't go there. I think they're actually some really good guys in the management there. I really found them really good guys. But, Valverde's such a presence in there, isn't he? And then there was some politics with Quintana there. I mean, the documentary told us all we needed to know, really. But I think you just don't change it. It's like Melbourne's like a footy club. You don't change it overnight. It's people might say, "Geez, Melbourne are going all right." I'm sure there's a hell of a lot of work that's gone behind the scenes the last few years to put Melbourne where Melbourne are now. And I know there's a long way to go, but clearly there's some things that are right. It hasn't just happened over one pre-season.
That's well answered. It doesn't
happen over pre-season. So I think they're aware of where they've gone wrong and what they need to do to get better, but it's going to take some time.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Valverde question, we talked about it last podcast. Where does he sit? Phil Gill, you pointed out, Jason, before that he's announced his retirement for the end of next year. Where do these older guys sit with just this young crop that's kind of carved out the middle part of cycling? You're either the fastest guy in the world or the best climber in the world, and everything in between is just held by the bands.
It'll come down to performance. It has to. Nathan Jones, for example, is performing for us, so he keeps going. Sean Burgoyne's performing for Hawthorn. So if Gilbert's not performing, Valverde is performing. I think ageism's a real thing in sport, and it shouldn't be. I think you get paid for what you're worth, and if, let's say, Nathan Jones finishes top 5 in our BNF, he deserves another year in to get paid as so. I reckon ageism shouldn't be a thing, and Geelong are a good example of that. Although didn't win last year, let's say they won last year. They won chasing Gary Ablett at 34. They win this year.
Hawkins got a 2-year contract extension instead of just the normal one at that age. So
they win this year. They've brought in Higgins. They've brought in Isaac Smith, and paying them well. I think ageism is a thing in sport that shouldn't be. Like, the best tennis players in the world are still the 3 guys that have been doing it.
Still the best. Yeah. I agree. So Valverde's performing. So he's performing. It feels. Gilbert's not really, is he? And look, I've got this theory. If you announce your retirement, people say if you're thinking about you're already retired. I don't necessarily agree with that, but if you announce it, and he's announced it 18 months out, that's a long victory lap, isn't it?
That's a Johnny Farnham, isn't it? That's a real Johnny Farnham.
That's a John Farnham. That's a long victory lap.
I
don't know. I mean, maybe for some people, maybe it inspires them. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it personally. I'm not a big fan of that.
He's such a big deal over there.
He's well liked.
Yeah,
he is.
Well liked. If you go to the homeland, he is loved. Like you go to Hello Sailor down the road, and there's pictures of him in the wall, just local.
And the riders rate him.
Every rider pre-Milan San Remo was saying, "I'd love to see Phil Gill just get it, so he can be the 5 monuments," and everyone was so happy for him. And
it has. Look, from my view, it hasn't worked well for Caleb there. I think he's not there. You would surely put all your eggs in the Caleb basket. There's an element of romanticism about Phil winning it, but is there reality around it? I don't think so now. You can. I mean, I don't know. You're not at that point, Max. You've seen teammates how quickly. I mean, I guess some slow decline. Others can drop off. I remember cricketers used to play with. I used to think once he drops off, he's going to go real quick. I won't say names, but Phil seems to have. That's gone past him now, surely.
Yeah.
Is that a rough call? I don't know.
No, we said that about
Well,
Cav.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might be hustling for that tier 2 racing.
He'll be in the mix again in a race somewhere.
Yeah.
But the big ones,
But he's the kind of rider we spoke about before that the Vans have made extinct.
they've taken it to another level.
Yeah, we're not going to see Phil Gill.
They've made it hard for Peter
Sagan's
Sagan.
just holding on.
They've made it hard for him, let alone.
And he's trying to pick the
someone who's
events.
38.
He's trying to pick the events that they're not at.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. But I think the notion of calling your retirement halfway into your 3-year contract, 18 months out, not sure I'd be loving that.
Well, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if nothing comes to life this year for him, like nothing, 0 wins. What if they still do the full year after that? Back to the sprinters. Cav getting a few wins. Groenewagen's back. I put Groenewagen in the potential to get back to that Caleb and Bennett level. I think he's got the goods.
Was he? I mean, I might have missed something. I get the crash and I get it was Groenewagen's fault. But is he the most hated cyclist in the world? He seems like he's apologising every time he ever gets into any sort of media. Did correct me wrong, who was the guy who fell off the bike?
Jacobson.
Is he the most loved cyclist ever? And everyone wanted Groenewagen dead. Like, it was phenomenal.
It was nasty. It was vitriol directed towards him, even from the team manager.
I've seen similar moves.
Quick Step.
Yeah, they haven't related to. Pascal Ackermann had a real bad one, didn't he?
Well, that was Caleb's view. Caleb didn't think twice about it. He thought twice about the outcome. So that was obviously extremely brutal and graphic and a horrific scene to see. But in terms of what actually happened, he's like, that's just sprinting.
Peter Sagan got kicked out of a Tour de France.
Yeah.
Running Cav into a barrier.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be a mental thing for Groenewegen. And I think physically we know that he's an incredible athlete and he's always going to be just, as you say, he's apologising every step of the way. It's whether he's prepared to do what it's going to take. As Caleb will tell you, what do you need? I always say to Caleb, what do you need in a perfect world, in a perfect lead out? What's the one word? And he just say fearless. Yeah. It's a fearless thing. So can Groenewegen go and do that again? Is he going to be like, I can't bear doing something he's going to injure someone again?
I sit with him on this.
Is he, where's he? He's just going to take a while.
And his team have slightly gone away from sprints as well. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's because they didn't have Dylan, but I dare say they're more interested in some of the other stuff now.
Well, Wout, Van Aert, he can win them anyway. Yeah. He seems to be doing anything. Does everything. But, yeah, it's going to be a big call for him to get back to that.
Primoz can win them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, they can do everything.
He beat Michael Matthews in that bunch sprint, didn't he?
Yeah. That's I think where there's those 2 sprinters at the top. There's 3 or 4 in the middle there around the Vans and Alaphilippe, and then there's 2 guys at the climbing end of the scale, which are just levels above everything else. Like the Pog picking up the win on the weekend.
Yeah.
Like he's beaten Alaphilippe, Mike Woods. Yeah. Quick guys.
Off the back of having a week off accidentally because of COVID.
Valverde. Yep.
But I think, like we talked about, you'd love the sport to build that story, because having the Tour de France guys race the one-day classics, I think, is the best thing ever. And it's what the sport misses out on, because people are so specific and calculated and driven towards one event that you miss out on the best in the world, which you see at every other sporting event in.
I was going to say, we need to see the Vans in Australia. Yeah. You need to see them in other places other than just Holland and Belgium.
Sagan's been there.
Sagan has, yeah, correct.
But the thing that confuses you about cycling compared to other sports is you don't know when peak fitness is. So another thing for a novice trying to get into the sport, they go, what's Roglic's finished 55th in this stage? He just won the Tour. Like, you just go, Pogacar, sorry, this is crazy. And then Van Aert's coming to Australia. He could get beaten in a bunch sprint by a random Australian, just because they're not on form.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, it doesn't work for them form-wise and timing, and that's why Cadell rarely did the Tour Down Under. It used to frustrate the organisers.
Could you move it later to March? Could it? Or is it just too messy? They don't want to be in Australia then, do they?
Because you got San Remo.
Yeah.
And then all the opening weekend in Belgium and all that's all around that time. And I think it takes them a while to recover.
It's already at the latest possible time.
It takes them a while to recover. I mean, you know what? Again, if we're asking for a reset and putting things on the table, tennis players do it and they go and play it. Now, I know people say, cycling, not tennis. But you know what? Every sport takes it out of you. I don't know. Why
not?
Don't
necessarily need to be summer, does it?
No.
What would it take to get the vans out to it? So if you wanted, you say to the Victorian government, next year I'm going to get the 2 vans here. What do you need?
Jason's wallet.
Cash? Is that the incentive?
Is the cyclocross season over there when
there will be an overlap.
That's a big problem for the vans because they're pretty committed. They're cyclocross riders, so
I can put him up in Blackgowrie, take him to Sereno pub. They love it down there.
Tell you what. If they knew how good it was, they'd probably have a look at it. I'd say
not far from Arthur's seat. They can go up it 4 or 5 times.
Yeah,
try and beat my record of 14 minutes.
I mean, that might take. Could you do something cyclocross here with those guys and bring them here and then for the races as well? I don't know. It would take a big investment, but jeepers, it'd be great to see those guys here because, as I say, we get to see Nadal and Federer and Djokovic, etc. every year. You get to see Lewis Hamilton here for the Grand Prix. You get to see those type of major events. Cycling, we get the one-off from Gawn, but it'd be nice to see the vans going against it and the other up-and-comers in the sport because there's a change, isn't it? A generational change. So let's build relationships with them now and get them over here because it'd be great to see.
Yeah.
The cycling fans would love it.
Yeah. I'm that much of a cycling nerd now. Do you reckon I'm going to jump on a cycling cross now? Cyclocross? You reckon that's me? You reckon I can make that step?
Yeah. Okay. Throw the bike over the shoulder.
Is that on GCN?
There was it is. It is. I don't know. GCN Pass for me has opened up so many doors. The other part that we haven't talked about, which I'm interested in, I think there's more opportunity, is the women's side of the sport because it doesn't have that core. Like, could someone actually buy that? It doesn't have the racing. It doesn't have the structure. It's smaller. It's new. It's accessible.
The answer is yes. Why not? If the women are up for it, why not? Why not? Why not be the new frontier? So we're going to do something different. We're going to do it differently. I think that the answer to that is yes. Of course they could. They could create their own story.
The women sport is actually slightly more exciting. They tend to have 10 powerful girls always in finish, just all breaking away. They're all doing Vanderpoels to a slightly lesser extent, but there's not many bunch sprint type setups, is there? Like a boring 200k bunch sprint stage.
Yeah. And I know they're starting to do versions of the old men's races that are around, which is good.
Should they make their own history though?
But I'm of the view that's just pushing them down the path of we
lesser versions.
Yeah, we uphold ourselves to the UCI and well, not the UCI, the ASO eventually, and we just go down the same trail and end up at the same spot as the men's. I don't know what would it take. A Jerry Ryan? Does Jerry Ryan have enough cash?
Oh,
he's got enough cash. That's the answer.
I'd say so. I'd say Max made a good point before. Like athletes, it's a limited lifespan. You need to for what a lot of the female riders, women riders make for what they put in and how good they are. It's not enough. So I would say you would like to think that they would be open. I would think they would be open if it meant commercially they could commercialise it. Why wouldn't they?
AFLW is in a very similar spot. But it's probably slightly more advanced. They've got a league.
Well, and they've also got a body to make it happen.
And it's also quite separate to AFL.
Yeah.
Which is good, but they're still part-time and putting in a lot of effort for not much cash.
Yeah. Yeah.
It needs some big influences. Like, again, I'd come back to Cadell. He's a big supporter of women's racing. When the Cadell Evans Creation Road Race was first conceived, we were going to start a women's race a few years later. Budgetary wise, we'll introduce a women's race a few years later. And Cadell was very firm. I can't put my name to it unless there's a women's race as well as a men's race. Simple as that. And he was respectful of budget. He understood that, but if there's a men's race, there should be a women's race. And he didn't want to be put up on a pedestal because of it. He's just like, people say, "Oh, you're great, Cadell. You're a great advocate for us." He says, "No, it's just what we should be doing. Simple as that." So So it needs some influences, people of influence to actually think about that. But it needs a leap of faith from the women as well. But the women they're great marketers. They sort of have to be, but they do great content, great marketing. But someone like Gracie Elvin's retired, this year? Was it last year she retired, Gracie Elvin? She's been a good rider. She's a very good rider. But you wonder, is she set for life? Is she really well set up? And that probably not. She'll have to go into work and whatever. She's had 10 years of the best years of your life and experiences, but she's 10 years behind other people who've been working in jobs and whatever else. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm just using her as an example. But I'm sure most of the women aren't getting the commercial return that they should be.
Yeah. On this too, I think a big step forward that cycling has made is through GCN. I know GCN Discovery, it's all come together. Just being able to watch the sport in the one place and actually watch it and not sift through.
It got messy for a bit there.
It got so messy when you had a little bit on SBS, a little bit on Eurosport. Couldn't get Eurosport on Foxtel. Some pirate link through the back end of Google. It was a mess. So bringing it together and adding in cyclocross, big tick, big start.
Yep.
Agreed.
Any final?
Is that the run sheet?
Well, we've got gone for an hour and 10 minutes, and I've got a meeting in 13 minutes.
Are you going to do another one pre-Giro?
Big star. I think we'll do a Giro preview.
Yeah, so I won't give you my Giro tip then.
The Giro's back. I think it was a good business overview. Thanks to Jason Bakker and very good insights. Thanks, Max Gawn.
No worries.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Max. All the best for the Demons, hey? They're doing great. It's good to see.
The days.
See you, boys.